Okay, I'll buy that. I'll take that as an answer. That's pretty good. That's better than I thought it was going to be. Sensei Jason Perry tells me all the time, if you're going to butcher the Okinawa language, just butcher it consistently. And I do. And I do.
Well,
So,
can I ask you a question?
yes.
So, for you as an American, having done practice karate firstly in the States and then coming to Okinawa and having an Okinawan family living in Okinawa, how has your experience been in terms of going from training in the States to training in Okinawa? I mean, what are your thoughts on the values of Okinawan karate?
So, okay, the difference is drastic. Um, as far as the formalities in the dojo, because most of the people that have taken the arts back to the Western world were military, right? Like this type of haircut here, and things are done in the military mindset. Dress right, dress, falling in, um, standing at attention, if you will, and in some sense going overboard with the respect level, and that's it's weird to say that. It's not that you should be disrespectful by any means, but
Mm,
um, a little bit a little bit harsh, a little bit rigid at times. Yeah. Now the difference with that is here in Okinawa, they have this thing called Okinawa Time, right? And people kind of show up, and I joke around. There's no minute hand on the clock. As long as you show up within the
mm,
hour, you showed up on time. That's Okinawa time, and
mm,
it's an island, and that's just kind of how people are. I've talked to friends from mainland Japan that frustrates them when they come down here.
mm.
Train the one monorail is a little bit late. Nobody cares. Buses, you can't trust the schedule exactly.
Yeah.
So that comes into the dojo as well, and that was really hard for me when I first got here. I could not stand if you're not 15 minutes early, you're late. It's kind of how I was brought up, and that's kind of how I felt. But after being here for a while, you realize people show up 15 minutes late, but they're still on time. 20 minutes, 30 minutes late, but they're still on time.
Yeah.
And this is consistent, and that person might only show up one day a week
Mm,
for 30 or 40 years.
mm,
Whereas in the States, I would get bent out of shape sometimes with myself or even with other people. Sensei's having class 4 or 5 days a week. Why aren't you there? Well, because
mm,
people have a life, people have, jobs, family, kids, taking college courses at night, doing whatever, working two jobs. I can understand
mm,
that. I've had to take that back a little bit myself and realize that for the most part, people here in Okinawa, I think, train 1 or 2 days a week, and they do it for a very long time.
mm,
And they're doing it for a variety of reasons, and this can happen in America as well. People will train for different reasons: health, self defense. They're bored. Hey, the dojo is right next to their house. Somebody
mm.
drug them along. Whatever. Family member is the one that's teaching. Those things are similar, but there's of course kata's the same, right? I mean, I trained in the same system in the States that I did here, but the way things are taught are a little bit different too. We like to ask the question how and why. Westerners do, I think. We want to know why we're doing something and also how we're doing it. Specifically, many of us are hung up on this thing of bunkai or application, right? How does this work? Can it work? Japanese really aren't that way. They
Mm,
do not tend to ask questions. As a matter of fact, my sensei in America, um, he used to talk about this. The first time he asked a question in the dojo in Okinawa, you could hear a pin drop. You just don't ask questions. You just do the kata. You know,
mm,
follow sensei or follow your senpai or just do the kata, do the kata, do the kata. And that's kind of breaking down a little bit over here, I think. Even in the time that I've been here, I've noticed that people are opening up to questions more, and you
mm,
have some senseis that have gone abroad so much that they know you're going to be asked questions. Not to put you on the spot necessarily, but people want to know, why am I doing this?
mm,
Or they're asking sensei, what are you doing? I had a conversation with a friend Friday. I got together with him 2 days ago for lunch, an Ishin Ryu practitioner, and he's from Germany, and his sensei is, of course, here in Okinawa, Okinawa man, and maybe the most senior Ishin Ryu practitioner on the island. His sensei is now, and he was asking him a question, asking the sensei a question specifically about breathing in Sanshin, their Sanshin kata, and he couldn't get it, couldn't get it. Sensei was telling him you're not doing it right, and finally his sensei, probably out of frustration, untied his gi, opened up his gi, and showed the student how he was breathing. And you'll
Mm,
understand this, I'm sure, with Goju-ryu, but it was
mm,
the Tanaden, just below the belly button was the only part of his body that was moving. And my friend was telling me this. He's like, I couldn't see that on him. He could clearly see that the student was not breathing properly, but most Okinawans would probably never ask him that question. Most
mm,
Okinawan students would probably never ask that sensei enough questions to the point that he would take his gi off. Sometimes in
mm,
Goju-do or in Uechi-do, they do that anyway, right? I'm sure you've probably done that
mm.
in Goju-do.
Yeah.
But those are just some of the differences. We want to know why and how, the
Mm.
Westerners, but
I always wonder, for me, brother, you're talking about, going back to the, Okinawan time. I find, people say that about, island time here or Polynesian time or whatever. I always find, to be totally honest, when the sea is involved, that, like we're a sea people as well. New
yeah,
Zealand's so we're very much, we sea people. So it's time and tide, so everything is a tidal thing. There's
yeah,
a belief that people get where they're going to be at the time they're supposed to get there.
yeah, yeah,
And with, you're talking about the thing about questions is I can understand it to a degree. I think that you have to do your time, know one, how to ask the question, and more importantly, when to ask a question. If you do it in a respectful way, in a proportional way at the right time, picking your time and being respectful about it. But it's like when you get people who just, I've trained in dojo where people will just start talking, like,
yes, yes.
you know, and,
I've,
and I,
right,
I
been,
I
I've,
get it.
I've been one of them.
I get it. I get it. I mean, I'm the same way. I want to know why, but I mean, I suppose for me, in our culture, very similar. Do it. Just practice. Just do it until a time when they say, "Are there any questions?" Which doesn't happen very often. But it's just you need to get to a certain point before they'll do things like that. I would feel so embarrassed if I was your friend. I mean, not that I don't mean any disrespect to him, but my gosh, that his sensei got so fed up that he had to
Well, I don't
flip
know
his
that
shirt.
I don't know if the sensei was upset with him or got fed up, or maybe he just wanted to really explain it. I'm
Yeah.
not sure, but I know what you're saying. Yeah, maybe there's a different way to look at that. Like,
Yeah,
but
man.
he wanted to know. Hey, I've been in a dojo before, like in the States, where people have asked, the sensei that I had in America was very in tune with his body, and he
Mm,
knew exactly what muscles to activate, where to tense, where to relax, to make everything as efficient as humanly possible, as efficient as he possibly could. And this was over
mm,
decades of training, I'm sure. But I've been in there before where students have asked him, can I touch you? Can I feel your body where you're tensing up right now? And he said, yeah, go right ahead.
mm.
That's also just a moment in time. That's 1 second in time. That's a frozen second, right? That's not him moving through kata. You can't feel that
Yeah.
and follow that
Yeah.
person around. But it's just a different mindset that we have. We want to
Mm,
ask those questions, and I'll tell you this too, Tori, from working for a Japanese business. I'm employed here in Japan. I'm an employee for a Japanese company.
mm,
The same holds true at work. You are senpai kohai. You have your boss, your supervisors. You don't typically ask questions. You just
mm,
do it. It's the culture. It's very much the culture.
mm,
Mainland Japan and Okinawan culture. Okinawa is a little bit more relaxed, but you just do it 500
mm.
times, 5,000 times. But So
Muito,
listen, at this point,
muito.
I guess I'll just hand the podcast over to you. You've been asking questions now. Do you want what do you want? What else do you want to know? Is this how this is going to be?
Yeah, man. Yeah. I'd like to ask some more questions if I can.
Nope. So I want to go back to another question that I had, and when I introduced you in the beginning as Tuari Dawson Yamabushi and Invisible Sensei, I have to ask you about Yamabushi. Sure. I don't think I've asked you this before.
It's a fun.
Where's this come
from?
Well,
it's always funny because. Okay. So it was actually a nickname. What people have thought is that it's actually a style. So Yama, of course, is the Yamabushi are, are monks, warrior monks. I didn't get named Yamabushi because I'm a warrior monk. I got named Yamabushi by a particular sensei. It was kind of this sort of Japanese sensei, and it was on Hawaii. And he, Yama is in mountain, and talking about bushi, not as in bushi in the way that we think about bushi, not in terms of karate or martial arts, but just look a haircut like a monk. Because I'm 6'4", kind of on the big side. He became a kind of a nickname. When I came back to New Zealand from living overseas for some of the work that I was doing, I decided I wanted to start a dojo. Now, tradition here in New Zealand is that a Maori tradition is that when you start up anything, as I was saying, you name it. So you name your buildings. All of our meeting places are named. Have an actual name, and the idea is that imbues it with some sense. Like you have the kamidana in a dojo, right? And that's the idea is that you do that through names in our culture. Okay. And I just thought it was kind of funny because where I live, there's a mountain above us that you have to cross to get here. So I thought, well, look, there's the Yama and the Bushi is, I'm the Yamabushi. And so I called the dojo Yamabushi. And what's kind of happened is that people have I've had people hit me up about it all the time. It's going, hey, are you some kind of who? Why are you doing Okinawan karate, but you're a Japanese name? I was saying it wasn't supposed to be that. And what happened was the dojo, the actual building, I called it the Yamabushi. But then people thought, oh, that's the style. It's not. And I'm not a Yamabushi. I'm not a warrior monk. Anything like that.
You got the look going anyway.
Oh, definitely. Monk, maybe monkey.
Yeah. I was sitting here thinking about that. I was like, I don't think I ever asked you that. I've asked you other questions about, Invisible Sensei and stuff like that. But
just on that, if I can just expand on it just real quick. One thing that I've always been really interested is the Shinto practice of Misogyny. So the idea of ritual purification, which is very big in our culture. So I do a lot of personal training in cold water and things like that, and we use water and things like that, seawater, streams, rivers for our purifications. So in that kind of, I know that was sort of part and parcel of the Yamabushi, their kind of mountain aesthetic training. So I've always been really interested in that.
Okay, I'll buy that. I'll take that as an answer. That's pretty good. That was better than I thought it was going to be. I'm
losing you going through a tunnel.
I'm just busting on you. So we got to get to karate at some point here.
Sure.
The story that I heard from you is that you did not want to play rugby as a child, although you had to. You've told me that in the past, right? That was something that was kind of encouraged highly there on the island. But somewhere along the lines, you ended up finding some of the martial arts. And I don't think karate was your first.
Well, karate and judo we're at this kind of the same time.
Same time, okay. I thought judo was your first for some reason. All right, so
judo might have been a couple of months before actually, but pretty much around the same time.
Was it in the same dojo, like from the same sensei?
No, two different dojo. But what happened was I saw my first experience to martial arts, and my first experience really training was when I would have been, I'm not sure if I was 5 or 6, but right around there, I just remember seeing in our school hall, there was judo dojo, and they put the tatame out. And there was back in the day when the tatame was white, not the green that they have these, those sort of green or those really modern looking things.
Yep.
And I just thought it was the coolest thing. They came out, and one day I went to a Catholic school, and so all our teachers were Catholic priests or Catholic nuns. And I missed my school bus home one day, and so they said, like, you got to wait in the main hall until someone comes to pick you up. And there was all these people in pajamas flipping, that's jumping around. And I was just, from the start, I was just like, this is the most amazing thing. And I remember the sensei came over and talked to me, and I just remember his hands were bound up like they were just huge wrists. And I was only a little kid. And he had taped up fingers, like you see a judoka or a jiu-jitsu practitioner, their hands. And I just went the most, and his feet were really veiny. And I was going, wow, and it was at the time when he had short gi pants, long gi top. And I just thought, this is so cool. And he asked me to be a part of it. A little later, I started training with my uncle and doing bits and pieces, but right from the start, I don't know what it was. I couldn't tell you today, but it was just cool. It could also be the fact that around that time Star Wars had come out and Luke Skywalker wore a gi.
Oh, jeez. You're the only one I ever heard of that got into karate because of Luke Skywalker and not Karate Kid. That's the new one.
Hey, man. Look, I was a little brown Polynesian boy who got told by my schoolmates because my skin was brown and my hair, yes, I had hair, it was black, that I couldn't be Luke Skywalker. So I said, damn it, I'm going to be Darth Vader.
There you go.
But I think, to be quite honest, there was just something, rugby, we're a rugby nation. We're rugby mad, especially if you're Polynesian.
Yeah.
I think that, to be totally honest, I grew up in a family where drugs, alcohol, and violence were a part and parcel of my upbringing. I saw a lot of violence as a kid and as a young man within our family. And to be honest, I started because I wanted to protect my mother and wanted to have some sense of control over myself and my emotions. And it was just something. It seemed at the time, as you're a kid, everything, if you're always worrying about how things look and powerful, and it just looked like something worth doing. And I just loved it right from the start. I remember I got my first gi and I couldn't believe it. I was just that gi, I think I got it from my next door neighbor who had done judo, and I just remember I ran home every day after school to put it on. Even if we went training, I'd put it on. I'd sit around the house in it. I mean, it's just one of those nerdy kids. Yeah.
And you still do now.
Yeah. I'm wearing gi pants as we speak, man.
Well, that's you have not shared that with me before, so I appreciate that. So then when you did find karate, was it Goju-ryu right from the beginning?
No, it was Kyokushinkai. So Goju-ryu karate made it to New Zealand in the late 70s, early 80s. We had a kind of one of the doyens of New Zealand, of the South Pacific karate scene, was a sensei called Sensei John Jarvis, who actually trained in with Masoyama in Japan, and had done the 100-man kumite. Was one of those first few to do the 100-man kumite, especially being a Westerner. Came back and started Kyokushin, but he started a dojo or an affiliation called Rembuden, which did Jodo, Kendo, Yaido, and a couple of other things too. So he was doing those sort of Koryu martial arts as well as karate. And then he was good friends with Don Drager in Japan, as many of those martial artists at that time were. And Don Drager Sensei, as I understand it, this is me getting this from, his book, Kurosaki Killed the Cat, and also from my seniors. He was introduced to Higuana Morio Sensei, and that's when New Zealand learned what Goju-ryu was really, and that's kind of where it all started. IGKF became a huge influence in the New Zealand karate scene.
And you've not looked back since. I mean, you have been Goju essentially Goju ever since.
Yeah, and my sensei left the IJKF to train with Tiro Chinnan's in 2015. God rest him. And yeah, for me, my karate was always about the people that I trained with and the sensei that I had. I had a great. I had a lot of sensei that taught me a lot of different things. Some of them were really, to be honest, were young men themselves and kind of immature. And so there was always, everything was oosh, and everything was, and everything that kind of, all the macho stuff that kind of tends to go along with it. Not always, but tends to. I just had a really good sensei who treated me really kindly. He was a great man. He's a good man, and he was just kind. I mean, and like I said, with my upbringing, it was finding people who actually had a kind word or treated me with respect or had anything good to say about me was hard. Was very difficult. So he was a great sensei. And yeah, look, I'm gonna give an example. Look, he would go out of his way to give me a ride home every night after training. Every night after training. He would open his home to me. He was always just one of those, just a great sensei. And one of the things which was really cool about him was he always had an open door policy, not an open door come in, dojo challenge kind of policy, but he had this idea that we'll just come. He would let anyone train with him. Doesn't matter what grade they were, doesn't matter what gi they wore. He'd never asked to say, right, take off your black belt and put on a white belt. He was just a really, really good sensei. And I didn't know that wasn't a thing. So when I went to other dojo and saw that if you weren't their affiliation or their style or whatever, you weren't allowed to train with them, it was foreign to me. And he was this very, very kind, and someone who I owe so much to.
It's good. It's good to hear that. It's, you were lucky. You were lucky. You had a good mentor, a good sensei, a good person to look up to. So that's beneficial because it's not always that way for everybody. You want it to be that way, right? It should be that way.
Yeah.
I think it is, but it's
and
not
look, man, I've had some sensei that that were complete dicks as well. I've trained with some people that were just terrible, terrible people.
Yeah.
That ruled their dojo literally by fear and intimidation. Yeah. And I literally mean by fear and intimidation. I've seen some really, really terrible people rise to the top. And I've trained with some of those people and been in some way, shape, or form influenced by them. But yeah, like you say, brother, we all want that good sensei. But he's someone I sort of emulate every time I put my gi on. And there's been many people and sensei that I've had since, but whenever I put my gi on him, I always say a word of thanks and try to emulate his example.
It's good. It's good. I appreciate hearing that. That makes me happy to know that there was a positive influence because I think it's a testament of why you are who you are now and what you're doing. Things that you and I have talked about offline, right?
Yeah.
Listen, I wanna ask you a few more questions here from another. Well, I have some that I wrote down. I wanted to go over with you, but then some more that came in from this gentleman, Mr. Jeff McDonald. We already got over the hairstylist one, which I thought was pretty cool. A couple of them I've touched on with you already, but and I had written down here myself is what's your main focus in training? And I have this. I wanted to ask you, what is your main focus in training now? And then also, if you can see yourself 10 years down the road, where are you going? What are you focusing on right now, if I can say, that's going to benefit you or benefit the people around you in the future?
In terms of my physical karate, what I'm trying to do is unlearn a lot of the bad habits that I've created either through what I've been taught by particular people or things that I've tried to create myself. I'm trying to remove the tension from my karate in the sense that there's a lot of things which I do, which are habits that I've seen myself do, and I'm going, why am I doing that? I mean, it's just sort of something that I've always done. So I'm looking more methodically at my karate. Someone's karate who I really admire, I've never had the opportunity to train with him, is Kikugawa Sensei, Masanari Kikugawa Sensei. He's there on Okinawa. He's an amazing karate practitioner who was in the Jundokan for many years. His karate, there's something really beautiful about his Gojuru. His kata is, I don't want to say, it's not effortless, but it's so ingrained in him that I just love the fact that there's nothing fake about, that's probably not a good word, but there's something really effortless, fluid, but there's a really good kime, but there's also fluidity and rhythm and timing in the way that he practices kata that I'm trying to emulate. And I'm just doing it purely through videos and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to remove tension and make my karate more natural for my body. I'm trying to remove the 20-year-old expectation I have of my body. I'm trying to stop having the expectation that I've got a 20-year-old body when instead of a 49-year-old body. And I'm just trying to really enjoy. I mean, you and I were training with a particular. Can we say his name? Can we say his name? Yeah. With Pat McGale Sensei this morning, and that's what I'm interested in. You know, like, you've got, you bag yourself about your kobudo, but your kobudo is really good.
Thank you.
I looked at you and Pat Sensei moving this morning, and I'm going, I'm not going to pick up my ball, let alone sai, because training with Pat Sensei is an exercise of frustration because he looks so effortless when he does his kobudo, his karate, and he's so kind of, let's do this, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, man, I'll tell you. I remember coming home from training with him. I think it was 2017 or 2018. He hasn't been here. He could not come here in 2020 because of COVID, but he used to come back here every year, and he'd come back for typically 2 full weeks or longer. So I'd get to train with him quite a bit. And I remember coming home one night and telling my wife, I'm burning everything. I'm burning my weapons, my gis. I suck. I'm just done. Because it was after training with him, right? And it was like, it's like, what am I doing? Like,
I'm the same. I am totally the same. I mean, like, it's funny, to be honest, brother, I only know Pat Sensei because it was actually listening to the podcast. But I actually really, and what was really cool is you had separated it into almost, areas of time in his life, so he could really get in depth in it. And I met him with, whilst we were engaged with something with a really close friend and mentor, Pedro Bernardi Sensei.
Yeah, good man. And I met Pedro Sensei here.
He's lovely guy. But we're there, and I'm going, is that Pat McGill Sensei? Because I remember how you were talking about you met him. Was he wearing a Gohan t-shirt or something like that with a rice cooker on it or something?
He was in a white t-shirt with a rice cooker overflowing, and it said "Powered by Gohan." And he just walks up and, hey, I'm Pat, and that was it. It was not I'm Pat Sensei or anything like that or this or that. It was just like super laid back, and we hit it off that weekend in Louisiana, 2015.
Yeah, I mean, but that podcast that's what kind of sparked me. And then later on, I had an opportunity to interview him on my podcast. Didn't do as good a job as you, but I gave it a shot.
No, you didn't, but that's all right.
I mean,
your interview with him was great. I'll tell you what, it was fantastic. You pulled out information from him that I did not know. So when I was listening to yours, I had to go back and listen to it 2 or 3 times. There was information there that I didn't hear, and I thought, wow, I spent a lot of hours with this guy, getting a lot of his background. So it was beneficial to hear that. But when you talk about being relaxed and stuff, right? I think I understand what you're saying about why you're doing it. You're not a 20-year-old man anymore. I'm not a 20-year-old man anymore either. But the relaxation part that comes along with, I guess, what Pat Sensei is trying to teach, right, and then what his teacher here on the
Yeah.
island, Shinzato Sensei, is trying to teach. It's being relaxed is not being weak. As a matter of fact, it's
Mm,
stronger. I think
mm,
it's just a better use of energy, better transition of
mm,
power. But it is super frustrating, isn't it? Like
mm.
trying to get
Well,
through.
it's kind of, when he's trying to articulate something, like he started karate like 3 years before I was born, and I'm like going, he's trying to articulate these principles that he's like, I like, scratching is, they're as natural as picking up a knife and fork to him.
Yeah,
But he's so kind with it as well, and certainly patient. You're both very patient with me. But it's funny, as I was saying, I've been teaching, elements of Kubudo and for probably 20 years. And I'm the same way, bro. I'm like, I'm going to melt down my sai, make a hammer, and then hit myself on the forehead with it and say, "You don't know anything.
yep,
I know nothing."
yep.
You know, and I'm
That's all
going to
they're
put
good
that
for.
in the hammer and actually just hit myself on the forehead until I get a tattoo that reminds me. But I mean, but that's the fun of it. That's the journey of it. I mean, in 10 years, I want to, like, now I'm shaping my own practice because I do Yado as well and Jiu-Jitsu and so on. I want to be really sure about as I move, if I next year I'm going to be 50. So that by the time I'm 60, I want to know, I want to have a series of things, kata and practices that I want to have, daily practices that I'm going to continue for the rest of my life. So it's understanding, it's not so much what I'm teaching anymore, because I'm not going to do much teaching anymore, to be honest. I mean, I love doing seminars and all that sort of stuff. It's always really cool when I get the opportunity. But I'm, like I wrote something the other day and it said, we spend a lot of time as teachers opening doors for other people, but not walking through those doors. And I think I've gotten to a point where I like to walk through the door, and allow people to, their own journey. And then maybe it's time for me to take one of my own. And I mean, like I said, man, I want to get to Okinawa and come and train with you and Pat Sensei and all our friends, and that Mike Hagen guy. Although I don't have the hair for it, let's be honest.
Yeah,
To catch up with Jonathan, for the Karate Without Belts
yeah,
podcast. I mean, all of our friends that we've
yeah.
kind of made over this pandemic period. That's going to be, and to have you guys down to New Zealand, that'll be a
Yes,
real joy,
yes,
man.
absolutely, absolutely. That's a must. That's going to
Mm.
happen. I don't want to eat up all of your evening here.
No,
You had
you were
talked.
good, man.
Oh, well, great. Then we'll take longer. A couple more questions that I've got and that came in from different people. You had mentioned kind of maybe backing away from teaching a little bit, but one of the questions that came in is, do you prefer teaching large or small groups of students? So you had talked to me about backing away a little bit from teaching,
Mm.
but does that mean that Tuari Sensei's not going to do seminars anymore? I don't think that's what you're saying, right?
No.
But what do you prefer?
It kind of depends on the student and the situation. I think it's always about context. I mean, I would like to train with Pat Sensei and you, where I'm standing at the back of a really, really big class, hiding, of a bunch of, for some reason, a bunch of guys well over 6 feet tall, um, bald, men and women that I can hide behind. Um, I I think no. The thing is that I never really backed myself as a teacher. It's only been in the last year with the help of people like Pedro Bernardi Sensei, and with the back, with the support of like yourself and Michael and our other friends, James Pankovic, all those guys that we kind of know and that are great influences. That I've actually started teaching online seminars, and I teach a seminar in New Zealand with two of my good friends, with two of my closest friends, Sensei David Redaway from the OGKF and Sensei Josh Scanlon, both two phenomenal karate practitioners. It's called the Gorju Guys, where we just really get together, the three of us, and we have a day where we just give our take on pretty much the same thing, and then we open the floor and we let people experience each other, in terms of training, different sensei, different practitioners, different styles. That's the sort of stuff that I'm interested in. But I guess I'm looking now for mentors. I'm looking now for colleagues who are walking a similar path. I'm not really looking for. This is at the risk of sounding arrogant. I'm not looking for sensei in the traditional sense of it. It's not. I don't mean it because my karate is so good that I don't need them. That's not. But the way that I'm approaching it is going to be different from now on. What I practice is pretty fully formed. I'd like to get better at that as opposed
Yeah,
to, that's what I'd like
yeah,
to do, man.
I understand that. I understand. Um, I've got a question for you, a little bit off the wall, maybe. Someone that has taught for many years, you've seen a lot of different students. You've been in a lot of different dojos as a student
Mm.
and teaching, and then also you've visited Okinawa, you've been to Hawaii, you've been or all around the world
Mm.
really, for various reasons, in and out of dojos. But I'm curious to know, what is your pet peeve? What is something that gets under your skin that you just can't stand in the dojo? Don't hold back, because just because I'm recording now, you've told me
Sure.
some pretty.
Oh look, man. There are some apps. I mean, I'll give you my pet peeve in any dojo that I go to. A complete disrespect for anyone who's coming through the door, who is new. That whole thing where you make someone feel really, really unwelcome. I find that lack of courtesy and respect to be that. I know what it's like to go into a dojo and not feel welcome. If anyone comes to our dojo, like I would like to feel that, they're made to feel as though they are welcome, and we get a seat for them. And like at one point when we had a kitchen where we trained, one of my yudanchi, I'd say, look, we have someone come in, break off training, bow out, go and introduce yourself to them, go and make them a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or something, and invite them to sit down and enjoy the training, and then go over after the training, explain what we did. That's just courtesy. That's one of my pet peeves. Another pet peeve in the dojo is, gosh, where does one begin? Um, I don't like that cult shit. I don't like that cultish, sensei says. I'm always worried about when people preface what they say with, well, sensei says this and sensei says that. And I'm going, man, have you got any brains of your own? I mean, one of my role models, one of my all-time favorite karateka and role models in life as well in karate is a gentleman called Sensei Armando Martinez from the OGKI in Miami. Um, he's an amazing practitioner, of karate, an amazing man. And one of the things that he said to me one time, he says, we have to remember that we are men, that we are adults, that we are men and women, and that we must be respected. We must show respect, and we must expect respect, earn respect. And for me, one of the things that I like about that is that, he's this really incredible karate practitioner and judo practitioner, speaks fluent Japanese, Cuban sensei, this amazing guy. He was a psychologist who's recently, retired after many years in a successful career with a wonderful family, a beautiful wife and beautiful, son and daughter and grandchildren. Um, for me, that's what I want to. That's those sort of people are the people that we need to listen to. It's the people who have experience. It's the people who people say long in the tooth. I think long in the tooth is a bullshit way of disrespecting people who perhaps are not at their physical prime anymore. I love sitting with the older practitioners and listening, just listening, um, because they have incredible stories to tell about their experience, about a different sensei. You get all these incredible gems if you can just shut up long enough to listen. I dislike when people discount the older practitioners, because I think that's where the good stuff is, with those older men and women who've been doing it for a long period of time. And if you can just be quiet and listen, you can learn some really amazing things.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that, man. I definitely agree with that. Good stuff. Look, those were the questions that I had. I really appreciate all of the details. But now, what are we going to talk about next?
I want to ask. I want to ask you. With the podcast,